Today, I am sitting down with the expert, Shea Mundt, who is a proposal strategist, and she's going to sit down and talk to us about what so many teams she speaks to still get wrong about federal proposals, and also why presentations now matter more than they ever have before. So, if your team is trying to win federal work, this conversation is worth your time. I'm so excited for you to listen to it, and we'll get into it. Hey, Lisa, it's so good for you to be on the Stargazing Brief. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this conversation because I love speaking with federal GovCon experts who know how to win a deal because they are so complicated. They're getting harder and harder to win. And so any insight we can get, anything that we can learn from you is gold in my book.
Let's do it. Yeah.
And I think one of the things that I really like about your background is you started in like the rhetoric and the writing space before you moved into like the strategy part, right? What did that teach you that you wish like most proposal and pursuit people really understood? Because most people, we don't have that background.
Certainly. I would be happy to talk about that. So for a little bit of context, I got my undergraduate degree and my master's from James Madison University in writing, rhetoric, and technical communication. And I also had a double major in undergrad. I ended up taking sort of the introduction to writing course at JMU. And I said, wow, I really do like this. And they made it into a minor. And so I added it as my minor. And then they made it into a major. And it was a major. And then the graduate program. And I just kept going with it. And my dad was a bigwig in federal contracting. And I remember being 18, 19, and he said, no matter what, organizations are going to need somebody who can write and to communicate and to take high concept ideas and translate them into ways that are easily understood. And so that's the entry point was really writing versus rhetoric. But as I moved through the coursework, I went, oh, snap. Rhetoric is really fun. What an interesting concept. People don't they hear that and they go, ooh, you're trying to change my mind, or you're trying to convince me one way or another. And the answer is, yeah, kind of. The concepts of rhetoric came about from ancient Greek. And what these philosophers, what the sophists were doing is said, hey, there's a way that when we speak, we are trying to accomplish something. We are trying to get somebody to change their mind or to believe in our way of thinking or to appeal to their emotions. We are trying to move somebody. And I just thought, wow, this is absolutely fascinating. So the foundation in rhetoric that I've carried forward with me into federal contracting is Aristotle had these three heuristics of appeals. It was logos, pathos, and ethos. Logos is the appeal to our logics, the facts, the real hard and fast evidence that we have. Pathos is the appeals to our emotions. We're trying to move somebody. And then we're also trying to appeal to their ethos or their ethics or their credibility. We're trying to say, hey, I am a credible source, and here's how I am trying to communicate that to you. And is there anything more apt in federal procurement than trying to appeal to those three things? I mean, the foundation is strong. So when I found federal proposals, competitive writing, there's not a lot of competitive styles of writing out there, right?
Not after university.
Exactly. You're maybe going for like a grant or you're going for some sort of funding. But when it comes to competing for multi-millions or billions of dollars, this is a very hyper-specific and competitive and rhetorically laden industry. So that I carried through with me. And I feel like that helped differentiate me in being a proposal manager and also an orals coach, which is one of my favorite parts of federal procurement to date. I can do the proposals, I can write the proposals, I can manage them, I can herd the cats, I can coordinate them. But man, when you get to that source selection methodology of orals presentation, that's where my interests are really peaked. And just to continue the thread between early university and today, I have in the last couple of years gone back to get my PhD in writing and rhetoric at George Mason University. So the study continues, and I continue to draw on that in my everyday life.
Where do you see rhetoric and just being a really strong persuasive writer. Where does that fit now with everyone using AI to write?
So AI, as we know, is nothing new. And I've been in federal procurement for the last 15 years. And at least in the last 10, people have been asking me about artificial intelligence as it pertains to federal procurement. And I have been sort of a legendary naysayer in leveraging AI. And that's not to say I'm a Luddite. I use it. I use it to craft messaging when the genre calls for it. And you ask, where does rhetoric fall in with AI? I'll tell you, in my PhD coursework last semester, one of the professors actually had us, as a weekly assignment, use AI tools to put our readings in conversation with one another, and to really to post the prompts that we used in research, in critical analysis, and then the conversations that came out, and then a reflection of what the outputs were. Now, what I'll tell you is that AI, when it comes to specifically academic research, is still real bad. It cannot cite, it cannot quote, it hallucinates constantly. It will be like, here's this quote on page 47, and you'll go to page 47, the quote doesn't exist. So right off the bat, it's not something that can be replace the human mind there. But even so, to use it effectively is still requires rhetoric in development of prompts. So, because you need to situate the AI as a particular audience. And that's why rhetoric is so important. It's knowing your audience, it's knowing their standpoint, it's knowing their frames of reference. So, if you're asking AI to do something, you have to do it from the perspective of whatever audience you are trying to persuade, because we are all persuaded by different things. And that's why in federal procurement and sales, we talk about in capture. It's about knowing the needs, wants, and biases of a customer. I'm not saying anything new to anybody, right? So why do we need to know that if it doesn't matter, if we're all just persuaded by the same thing? It's because we're not persuaded by the same thing. So if you know that somebody is cost constrained, then you need to make sure that you have that as part of their sort of audience analysis, right? If you know that somebody wants to do it better, faster, then that needs to be incorporated. That's where rhetoric still plays a tool. It's because it's that human connectivity of what makes us tick and what makes us decide that AI doesn't have on its own. Until there is hard and fast standardization in the way that procurement is released by the United States federal government, until data is standardized, until the solicitation process is more standardized and streamlined and regimented, to respond using AI on the industry side is going to be a constantly evolving and or losing battle. And a story I like to tell is a couple years ago, a gentleman slid into my LinkedIn DMs and was like, I have a tool I want to show you. I said, okay. So I took a call with him. He said, your job, proposal writer, you're obsolete. I don't need you anymore because you would not believe, Christina, the things that people say to me. So you,
What a way to convince you of something. Yeah.
bananas. So he was like, the obsolete. I have that's something that can replace you. I have built a model that can win proposals. And I said, cool. Is this for the entirety of the federal government? And he said, no, Navy. And I said, okay, cool. So like any solicitation that comes out of Navy, you're going to be able to answer with just the point of a button, point and click. He said, well, no, not Navy, like NAVSEA. And I was like, oh, okay, so like all of NAVSEA. And he was like, well, no, but it's been proven successful going to this one contracting officer. And I went, okay, great for that one dude until that one dude leaves. Like, why did we get down for the AI to the myopic level of the individual? It's because the individuals are making the decisions and they are putting out the solicitations. They are developing the bid packages to go out to industry. And that's why this guy that was really excited about the tool that he built got all the way down to a single individual. Now, if you multiply that to every contracting officer in the United States federal government, you're going to have, a behemoth of an LLM. It's going to
Well,
be
and
able.
they change all the time.
Exactly.
It doesn't matter who's there today.
And,
Yeah.
even before the 2025 Doge era, may it, stay so far back in the past that we never see it in the rearview mirror again. Even besides that point, yeah, people leave. The names of the companies and of the employers will change and the individuals stay the same, but their roles and their responsibilities are going to vary depending on where they are. So, yeah, going down to that level when it comes to AI, it can be helpful for a short time, but it's not a long term solution.
Yeah, and I mean, that kinda goes to my next question, which is, I mean, I know so many people who are responding to these and trying to get on vehicles, they have a lot of misconceptions about how the federal buying decisions are actually made versus how they think they're made, like, and I know you speak to a ton of people, like, what are the main misconceptions that you just keep seeing over and over again?
I sincerely believe, based on how I speak to a lot of people in industry, is that they believe that decisions are made based on sterile analysis of data. And it's because
Mm.
we have this conception of evaluation criteria, and evaluation criteria down to whether or not something's going to be evaluated or scored based on adjectival ratings, whether it's outstanding, whether it's, whatever the adjectival ratings is, it's marginal, it's this, that, and the other, because that is how things were historically done. We've moved more and more towards confidence ratings and whether or not the agencies have high confidence or low confidence in your ability to perform. And that switch has been very much by design. And it's to offer contracting officers more flexibility in their right to choose and to down select and to ultimately award to an organization. And so what I believe is a common misconception is a lot of people think that this is a game of numbers. It's a stats game. So if I submit 99 proposals, I am going to win 30 of them. That's why we have stuff like P-win, right? Everybody is trying to take a very subjective medium, which is the written word, and objectify it and make it so that it is hard and fast. I have a 30% chance of winning. I have a 50% chance of winning. My love, it might make you feel better at night, but nobody knows what it was, and that's the frustrating thing too, right? You can do everything correct and still lose. And that, I think, is the common misconception. It's, what am I doing wrong? I'm not winning. Okay, well, there could be some very basic reasons why you're not winning, or if you're being deemed non-compliant. Maybe the reason is that you don't have the customer intimacy. Maybe the reason is that people simply don't like you. And guess what, Buttercup? That's going to impact your ability to do work. Reputation is a huge part of this. Trust is a huge part of this. That's why the confidence ratings are so flexible for the contracting officers. They need to trust that you're going to be able to perform. I always say that a lot of people like to conflate federal sales with marketing, and they'll say like, "Oh, it's the same thing." And there's overlap, certainly, and there's a reason that marketing exists in an environment where sales is prevalent. And it's because marketing builds that and fosters that goodwill and that reputation in industry, because you're more likely to sell to somebody who knows you, who recognizes your name, who says, "Yeah, I've heard of your company and I think that you do good work," based on these elements of rhetoric, based on these rhetorical appeals that I've seen through marketing. The most common misconception in industry is to think that it's a puzzle to figure out, like that there's a right answer and that there's a wrong answer.
Yeah, I think you're right. I see a lot of people who are really obsessed with the compliance piece and trying to make it into a math problem. And I think that's important, but you're right. Like, if you don't have that confidence, if they don't like you, if they don't trust you, that doesn't matter.
It's also funny you talk about not liking you. There's so many incumbents that get that incumbentitis, and they go, "Well, the customer loves us." And I go, "Customer might like you. Customer don't love you. Don't love your
Yeah.
mama loves you probably, but the customer, that person over in, the procurement shop, no, they probably don't love you the way that you think they do."
No, no, and they're not gonna put their job on the line for you.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I think that's a huge part of it because we have so many conversations about when a pursuit decision gets decided on the procurement side, and I know I have an opinion about this, but what do you think it is? Like, where do you see that decision really being made?
So legally, the decision has to be made at proposal, at
Sure.
bid,
Right.
right? And I think that that's why so many people they have this school of thought where they come in and they go, if something's on SAM, it's already decided. Yes, no, of course there's capture and there's shaping. Not every opportunity gets shaped. Period. It doesn't. Like, you might think that there's a likelihood that it has if it's a high dollar value, if it's a highly valuable contract, then yeah, somebody's probably stuck their little fingies in there, their little toes, tried to maneuver it in a way that positions them the best. But even a shaped opportunity is not an automatic win. It's not, because it's about meeting the requirements. And if the requirements are general enough where multiple vendors can bid, can compete on it, then there's still a possibility of win. And it depends on how the contract is set up. It depends on if it's best value. It depends on if it's LPTA. It depends on so many things. So when do decisions get made? Legally, they get made at proposal. Like, there's always still a chance. And I know I said this isn't a game of statistics, and it's not. And you have to choose your risk tolerance and your threshold, because it's expensive to put together bids. It's expensive to write a proposal from a B&P perspective. It's expensive to outsource it to consultants, to use AI. But all of that becomes risk and reward, right? Every single thing that we do, every decision that we make is based on that sort of continuum. So where do they get made? Obviously, best practice is to influence during the capture phase, during the request for information, during the market research. I'm very much a proponent of responding to market research, to getting in front of customers in advance, to shape opportunity, to write white papers and say, hey, these are the solutions to problems that you have. And I'm also very much a proponent of, if there is an RFI or a sources sought notice, saying, hey, here's an acquisition strategy that we recommend based on how this can better position you, the agency, to offer a more competitive bid in industry. Because it can't be about, here's how you move it to me. It's, here's how we help you. We're going to act on behalf of the customer. So where does the decision get made? Obviously, we're all human beings. And so somebody can make a decision in the back of their little heads and their brains well before proposal. But legally, the decision needs to be made at proposal.
No, no, absolutely. I'm not gonna lie, like, I am that person who is like, if it's on SAM.gov, not saying you shouldn't bid, but be wary. So I'm part of the problem.
No, it makes sense
Yeah.
though. It is a fine through line to have for people. And I think that it can't be taken so literally though by
Oh no,
industry.
I agree.
It's like,
Nuance.
hey, what we're trying to show you is that best practice is to do capture. Best practice is to influence. However, there's tens of thousands of bids that come out. And when those bids come out, some of them, yeah, are going to be shaped. Some of them are like, hey, we got this nut and bolt. That one, no, if it's on SAM, that's a need that they have. And so you
Yeah.
should shoot your shot. So there's so many differences between products, between services, between different capability sets. So that's why, and again, legally, the government will say, no, we're not making the decision in advance of that. If it's on SAM, it means that we're looking to compete it. But as industry, yeah, we know that, hey, somebody might have gotten in and there might be a little earworm, a little brain bug back here saying, this is really who I want to win.
Yeah. Because these are people making decisions. What decisions should teams be making during like their pursuit process?
It means something to every organization. I think that's the other part of this. I think that there is so much rigor and process for process sake in federal procurement. And I have simply worked with too many bootstrap small businesses to be like, there is a one size fits all, because there's
Yeah.
not. And so that's what I'm very much choose your own adventure. I'm very much, hey, you need to let me know what your non-negotiables are. You need to let me know. And some people's gate reviews, some people's bid, no bid, go, no go. I had an organization that was like, if it requires more than 3 key personnel, I'm out. Because we're such a
Yeah.
small business, we don't keep people on the bed. That's all going to have to be staffed up. And so we don't have people that we can go and do it. Some people have said, if it's more than 30 pages, I'm out. It's a no bid for me. And that's everybody has their pain tolerance threshold that they have to reach. And some people say if it's too tight of a turnaround, if it's like less than 2 weeks, they're not going to respond to it because that's too quick. They can't take that momentum and then run with putting together an effective bid. Some people say if it's less than such and such $1 million, I'm not getting out of bed. That's problems that I don't have.
Yeah. I want that issue.
Right? Yeah, if it's less than 20 million, I don't even want it, right? Like
Yeah.
there are some organizations that do that and some portfolios within organizations that have those sort of dollar thresholds. So I don't have a hard and fast like these are the decisions that you need to make. I will say with the exception of know who's going to be your point person, know who the stakeholders are going to be, and then what their roles and responsibilities are. Because that's where I see teams fall apart. And that's why the kickoff meeting is, I believe, the most important proposal development milestone that there is, because it's where you say, hey, we've shredded the solicitation. Here is the annotated writer's outline. Here are all of the writing assignments. Here's the schedule. Here's when these are due. Here is your pens down, right? Like, here's how we are going to coordinate. Here's the logistics of such. Here's the iterations of reviews that we're going to do, whether you follow the color team review model or not. So just making sure that everybody knows the direction that they're going in advance, because you can lose time and ground fast if you don't have. So there's a reason it's called the proposal manager and a capture manager. They manage the team and the process.
What are some like other signals that I could be really looking at?
Look, data is just that. It's data. It's informational. It's meant to inform, but not to decide. Data doesn't make decisions. People make decisions. So any data that you extract is all pontification, right? Because we typically look at data as historic information to inform future progress.
Yeah.
And a history of dollars spent is not 100% indicative of dollars that will be spent in the future. Like all we are doing is saying, hey, this is trend analysis. This is where the trends were. So we might ascertain that this is where the trend will go, but we're still guessing. So should you buy data? Depends on your organization. I've worked with a lot of people in the past, and just there's been companies that have said that they want market intelligence, and then they get market intelligence and go, okay, now what?
Yeah.
Right? Because it's actually not intuitive. It's not intuitive on how to change the data into action. And so whether or
Very
not
true.
you want to buy data depends on your ability to enact it and to move forward. So yes, for some organizations, no, for other organizations.
If I'm setting up my process, right? Like I'm getting into this, I want to do it right, but I've heard of this thing called AI, I've heard of this thing called automation. What other parts of my process that I should be automating? Are there parts that should only use human judgment? Is it always a mix? What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's unfortunately always a mix. Even people want to use AI for admin, right? The administrative tasks, this and that. And like, look, we've been doing this for as long as I've been in industry, where even before AI, there were word macros. I'm showing my age here, word macros that would identify acronyms to help you build an acronym list. Because before that, it was some poor sap like myself scrolling through hundreds of pages, finding each individual acronym and then putting it in a table. Because these were printed files and documents, and there was no control F. So if the government agency was reading through it and they needed to identify the definition of an acronym, they'd have to go back to the appendix. Like, that's changed. I haven't seen an acronym list required in a long time. If anybody out there still sees it, that's fine. It's not me. I haven't seen it. Thank the sweet,
No,
everything
me
in the world.
either. Thank
I
goodness.
haven't seen the requirement. I don't want the requirement. Please keep it as far away from me as possible. But things like that sort of administrative task, like, yeah, you could use AI to do it. You still got to check it. And
Yeah,
that's a lot of people
absolutely.
want to use it for shredding a solicitation to build an outline. Like, and what I've always said is, hey, it might have taken me 4 to 6 hours to build these annotated outlines manually. Maybe the AI did it instantaneously, but I still spent 2 hours reading through it, looking at it, changing it, adjusting the formatting, and also knowing it. Because writing is a knowledge making activity. Knowledge when you are writing, you are learning. It is being codified in this crazy human brain that we have, and it's being hardwired there. So maybe I saved 4 hours by using AI, or maybe I know it a whole hell of a lot less. That's the toss up behind using these tools. So yeah, I think that there's always ways to, like, hey, make this sentence sound better. Here you go. Great. That sounds more like English versus what I said, which was really convoluted. And then incorporating that. But it still takes so much human interaction. So this idea of point and click, and look, again, there's going to be people out there that are going to be like, I have what's it called? Capita 6. I have Claude and I've done this and figured out X, Y, and Z. And it's like, yeah, you probably have for your specific company, customer base, capabilities. Everybody can find the flow that works best for them. But as sort of in general, on the whole, I think it is always going to be a marriage of people and technology.
Yeah, I'm with you. Like I have, built Claude skills to automate, like you're saying, a lot of the admin, but it's never fully like handed off. Like, okay, I don't have to worry about that. I don't have to think about it anymore. It's just like a you put it in a table for me, but now I need to go read that table in depth. This is so obvious, but the fact that I am seeing so many proposal teams never get hired or automated out for AI. I'm just like, I see legal issues down the road for you.
Yeah.
Like loss, revenue loss. I see legal issues. I see embarrassment. It's going to help you, but it's definitely not a replacement in my opinion at all.
And it's still even for the admin. The way that I've seen some of these AI like inbox management systems hallucinate, collapse threads on top of each other, attributed emails to somebody else's account where they never sent it. Like it is just not, you still need critical reading ability, right? You still need to understand how comms works and what all of these things mean. So yeah, it's the whole like, I'm just going to outsource this. When people say that, I sincerely believe that they simply don't understand how federal procurement works and operates.
No, no, I think it's the same for any team. Like I feel like AI is like, well, any tool, like it's useful, but it doesn't know necessarily what good looks like. And the only people who know what good look like are professionals who have been doing it for a long time. It's just, and if you have somebody who's reviewing it who doesn't know what good looks like, then that's still not good enough.
Yeah, absolutely. And something that I say to all my small business teams now, a tool is only as good as the team that is going to adopt its usage. You don't adopt it, you don't have KPIs attached to the adoption of the tool, it people aren't going to use it.
Yeah.
See an email because you're not going to be on this platform.
Yeah. I have an accounting software. I am not an accountant. My accountant looks at my accounting software. Like, how about that? That's how it is. That's how it is. But okay, so I know that you advise so many companies. So let's say that I have, or that you're advising a really early growth stage GovCon firm and they're entering a crowded category like most people are. Like, where would you say that they should focus their differentiation? Let's say, like, should they be focusing on their narrative, their pricing, relationship, data, something else? Like, is it a mix? What should they be really focusing on?
Differentiation is one of those buzzwords in federal procurement that I think a lot of people believe that they have a lot of, and then come to find that maybe you're not as special as you thought. So,
Yeah.
a lot of people will be like, we have 15 differentiators. Babe, you might have one or two.
Yeah.
And from there, I would say to really dive into that differentiation. When I say what makes you different and you say our people, and I say, cool, what about them? Well, our people are the best. The best how? Well, they're the best at this work. According to who? And they get down to the level of granularity that they think is sufficient. And then I say, okay, but then why does that matter? Not in general, but to this specific client. And that's where that customer intimacy comes into play. That's where that like understanding what your value proposition comes into play. You have to know who you are and what you're selling and to who. So you say like early stage market entrant, that's the first thing I say is I'm like, who are you selling to? And they'll go, the government. And I go, no, try again. You're absolutely not selling to the capital G government. You're not
Yeah.
even selling to specific agencies in most cases. You're going down to the sub-agency level. You might be going down to the level of the individual. That's who you're selling to. So the government is never the answer. And that's so
The
many
government.
early entrants are like, I'm going to do federal work. And I go, okay, great.
Yeah.
That's gotta help me narrow the focus here, my love. And then they'll say, okay, well, maybe I need to figure out who is buying what I'm selling. And I go, great, perfect. We've gotten to sort of step two. Who is buying what you're selling? And then what do you do to find that out? You look at data, you look at trends, you look at what's happened in the past to try to tell the future. And then once you have that, then it's about actually getting in front of the customer. Then it's also about having the engine to submit bids. It's having the people, it's having the back office that can handle even winning a contract. You say, like, where do you start? Where there is no real start except for know who you are and what you're looking to accomplish. Know what it is that you're selling and why they should pick you. That's sort of like if you really had to do a step one, because then all of these steps shoot right off of it.
Yeah, and like let's say that I am, maybe I run a proposal team, maybe I run a pursuit or capture team. What should I be really focusing on right now? Because I personally feel like the way things are being purchased, by the federal government, like on an agency basis, is different and it is more difficult. So like if I'm trying to train my team, I want to make sure they're upskilled. What should they be doing? What should they be focusing on so they can keep winning instead of falling behind?
I'm going to bring it right back to the beginning, and I'm going to say orals, presentations, and preparation for that. I think that the answer to AI is orals, presentations as source selection methodology. Orals have been in the FAR for the last 30 or so years. They are nothing new. They had a pause in 2020 when all of them were canceled because they were in person and we hadn't moved to a virtual environment. Within the year, we started seeing more and more orals because of the virtual environment. And we said, oh my gosh, now we don't have the administrative burden of having to book a room. It's just on Zoom. This is super easy. People can do it from their homes. And people were more prepared for them too because they were virtual. There was a little less pressure of being right in front of somebody talking to them. Everybody got used to this sort of virtual meeting environment. Now, guess what, buddy boy? We're going back to in person. And we're going back to in person because of people are always going to game the system. So the reason that oral presentations were really spearheaded in the 90s is because somebody in the government side said, industry is getting too good at writing proposals. And now we need to see them do orals. And somebody on this committee said, there's a video of it from the 94, I think it is. They said, well, with all due respect, won't some people be better at oral presentations? And it's like, yes, but those are the people that we want to work with, was the sort of moral of the story there. The people that you talk about confidence ratings, if you can get in front of somebody and you can clearly articulate that you know the subject matter, confidence through the roof. Oh, I think training and upskilling your SMEs on how to talk about what they do. We know that's a hardship in the proposal process. People always say, how do I get my SMEs to write? And I go, you kind of don't. You
Yeah.
have to write
No.
and you have to extract it from them. I've been
Agreed.
so many times, I've been like, all right, you say you do this. What's the process? And they say, well, there isn't a process. I said, yes, there's a process for everything. No, there's not. I just do it. Really? When you put your pants on in the morning, do you do it one leg at a time or both legs at a time? And they say, well, one leg at a time. I said, that's a process. You have a process by which you accomplish your tasks. And so to have them skilled in being able to say exactly what they do, why they're good at it, and what the benefit is, that's where people should be focusing right now in 2026.
So like let's say I know so many people who are in proposals and the presentations are so anxiety inducing for them, right? Like, I don't know if it's because they're like a lot of us are introverts or what, or just not a lot of practice. But what would you suggest to people who are like, okay, I know I got to get better at this. What should I be focusing on? What should I do?
I don't believe, and this is where I try to meet people where they are. So not everybody is going to be like this loquacious coming out and being like, I'm going to charm you in a presentation. And that's why I
Yeah.
brought up logos, ethos, and pathos. It's because it's not always about that. If it's just appealing to facts, then, and if you're an introvert, then you stick with the facts. You have to really understand your communication style in a business perspective. What is there? There's something, the DISC assessment. Have you heard of that before? So like I'm strong D dominant. It's like I'm bottom line up front in the way that I communicate. But not everybody is. So there's like the interpersonal communication, there's the compassionate communication, I can't remember what the other one is. But it's understanding what your strengths are and then using them. It doesn't mean turning yourself into an extrovert. It doesn't mean turning yourself into, an actor. But it is about, from a process perspective and from a framework perspective, saying in a presentation, I need to account for their needs, wants, and biases. I need to tell them what I'm going to tell them. I need to tell them and then tell them what I told them, because we're talking about retention metrics now too. So I think it's just finding somebody that can help meet you where you are to get better. And it's not going to be the same for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also think that it's never as bad as you think it's going to be. You go and then it's just, you're going to practice. You're going to get better at it, like anything.
I present constantly and I still borderline blackout every time I'm on a stage. And it doesn't mean that I'm not doing a good job, but it just means, yeah, of course. I believe if you're not a little nervous, then you're cocky. And if you're cocky, then you're susceptible to failure. And I
Yeah.
think that, if you're intentional, if you understand what it is that you're trying to accomplish and you're genuine and you're vulnerable, I think that we're all just trying to connect with other humans. And that's what a presentation is. And that's what procurement is in a lot of cases, whether you want to believe it, admit it, or not. So that's what I would recommend.
No, I completely agree with you. Where can we find you?
I am very easily accessible on LinkedIn. Some might say overexposed. So please look me up, Lisa Shea Mundt on LinkedIn. Send me a direct message, and I'd be happy to get back to you.
And she is not. She gives the best advice over LinkedIn. So go and follow her. Like even if you're not in federal procurement, like go follow her. You're just going to learn wonderful things. So thank you so much for being on the Stargazy Brief. This has been wonderful.
Thank you for having me. All right, till next time.
All right, Stargazers, I'm so glad you made it to the end, because I was reminded that at the end of the day in federal procurement, it is usually like one or two people who need to be persuaded. They are going to be judging you and they want to see you have sound judgment, and they need to trust you and just have so much confidence in that you can do what you say you're going to do in the proposal. So if you are on a BD team, a capture team, a pursuit team, GovCon growth, whatever your team is called, this is such a good reminder that if you are trying to upskill your team and to win more, we need to be really working on our rhetoric, both written and spoken communication skills, because that is what is going to set you apart and help you win more in federal procurement today. And if you like this episode, please give it a like and a subscribe. And the best thing, honestly, you could do is share this with somebody who you know will enjoy it and will find it useful. And because that is how we grow, that is how we elevate this industry, is by learning more and becoming better together. All right, I'll see you next week, and keep looking at the stars.